Ashtar.
Hi, Ashtar.
Little busy, but to be expected.
Yeah. So, do you want to tell our audience why we're redoing this?
Alright. So, in light of a
Incident.
older incident that happened a while ago, we had to take down a whole bunch of videos because of that incident. Many of those videos
are actually still up, but we'll take them down once those series have been redone. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna explain that. We took down a whole bunch of one-offs, but we decided since that most of the videos that are still on the channel that have the person that was involved in the incident in them, we left it up with a warning on one of our videos, which we never officially posted a warning video about that, but semantics. We have decided, mostly AJ has decided, to fully cut ties that we are going to redo everything that they were involved in that we can, other than one-offs, because that can't really be done easy. And replace, and when we are done with the new LPs, we will delete the old ones and replace the videos. Upon doing so, any other warnings that we have posted about this, other than this one, will also be deleted unless they're in videos.
Yeah.
There will be no explanations, and there will be no further talk about what happened.
Yeah.
AJ wants to cut ties with it and move on.
Honestly, in moving on, I'm putting what happened behind me, finally. Because what happened with him really hurt this channel. So, that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's get started with the game, shall we? So, we're going to full survival mode, or we're going to go hardcore mode?
I would not recommend hardcore.
So, survival it is?
Survival is what we did last time.
Let's do this. And this is on a different computer than the last time we did this, so maybe the loading will be a little bit better and it will not crash as much.
Yeah, so to explain, why the water quality looks like PS1 graphics, it's for the sanity of the computer.
Yes.
So, we apologize if certain graphics aren't up to, like, your expectations for this game, but this computer, the computer that AJ is using can't really run this game the best, at its best. And so we're gonna run it at what we can. I'm gonna also say this warning now, should we hit a brick wall, or should something happen to cause A, glitch, B, broken flag, or C, a key item being missing, we will use cheats to get around it.
But cheats will only be used if, like, I'm so frustrated that I can't do it anymore.
Well, that's kind of what I said.
Yeah. Anyway, press, I guess, where's the ending button? Anyway, here we go.
Attention. Hull failure imminent. All personnel abandon ship. Launch in 3, 2, 1.
Bye, Aurora. Well, this is starting well.
Never does.
Oh, that's nice.
And
Good night.
clonk. keep in mind, everybody, that we know that there is another one called Below Zero, but
Still in early access.
it's still in early access, so that's not being the plan of doing that one is not going to happen until it is out of early access. And two, having played it myself in early access, it is much more intensive. Like, there's a lot more to Below Zero than there is to this game.
Fire. Oh, I didn't know.
Congratulations! You died!
Ow, I'm still on fire. Seriously? Why you not be on fire? Thank you. Well, that happened, huh, Ashtar?
Yep.
Altira.
You have suffered minor
Also known as
head trauma.
Weyland-Yutani.
This is considered an optimal outcome. This PDA has now rebooted in emergency mode with one directive to keep
People who
you
watch Aliens
alive
will get that.
on an alien world. Please refer to the databank for detailed survival
Altera
advice.
is the very
Good
typical,
luck.
stereotypical sort of mega corporation.
Yeah. I am going to...
So,
Did they
little
change the
backstory.
color of the fabricator over here? It used to be red.
It did, huh? Wonder when they did that.
Anyway, while you do that, I'm gonna heal myself.
Yeah, so first aid kits and stuff used to be red. I'm guessing they did that for clarity.
I'll take the water, but I'll leave the food bricks for now.
Yeah. So
Let's go see the outside world, shall we?
the two modes that people are gonna mostly play, well, three modes that people are mostly gonna play are Sandbox, Freedom, and Survival. Sandbox is exactly what it says on the tin. It's pretty much creative mode. Freedom is all you have to worry about is your health and oxygen. And then Survival adds the food and water meter. Hardcore is not a mode you play if you want to have fun.
I tried it once, and I did not even last 5 minutes.
Hardcore is effectively survival, except that when you die, your save file's deleted.
Yep.
As someone who finished the game on hardcore, don't. Just don't. It causes much more problems
Then it solves.
than you are really willing to try and solve.
So right now, I'm in the safe house, right?
Yep. So there are many biomes in this game. The biome you crash in is the safe shallows. Now, some people will argue that the map is randomized. This is not entirely true, but also not entirely false. The terrain on the map, or at least the biomes, the placement of the biomes isn't randomized. They're always in a certain area of the map. The size and the exact shape that the biomes are made into, like the actual topography of the biomes, is what is randomized. So you might not get a kelp reef or a safe shallows the same shape more than once. But the placements of these biomes will always be in the same place. So the safe shallows will always be in that area, the kelp forest will always be in its allotted areas, etc. So what it means by randomized maps is the randomization is randomized terrain, not randomized biomes.
New blueprint acquired.
You know what I've noticed, Ashtar, in I've noticed through my playthroughs in the past, is that there's a small grace period between when the screen goes dark and the music actually hits for you to get to the surface.
So this is for those of you who don't know, I used to play this game back in way early access. Which, why would you know that?
Oh, you see this little guy?
Yep.
No thanks. Bye. I'll let
So
you-
back in like the early early beta, the air meter worked exactly the same as it does now. So how it worked is that your air meter goes down by 3 every few seconds, unless you have certain pieces of equipment which change that, which those are few and far between. After you run out of air, you have a grace period of about 3 seconds before your screen goes fully dark and the death music hits. As long as you hit the surface before the death music chimes, you're effectively safe.
Yeah.
So the screen can be almost entirely dark or actually entirely dark, and you can hit the surface and you'll just be fine.
Acquired.
Now, this game, if you're expecting realism from this game, don't. The bends aren't a thing in this game. However, what few people do know is that there is a cheat called nitrogen. What this cheat does is it makes it so that your air capacity is larger, but you can get things like the bends. So there is an option for if you want to play like that, but keep in mind that it is a cheat technically, so you won't get any of the achievements
Well,
of the
I have all
game.
the achievements in the game.
Weapons were removed from standard survival blueprints.
Yes, but I'm saying that for others who want to play the game.
Yeah.
The knife
Is that if
remains
you
the
cheat
only
at all, the
exception.
achievements are turned off.
Can I get the battery again?
You need acid mushrooms for that.
Let's go up the top, just for funsies. Whoa. Whee!
Aurora is extremely bored.
How many of these do
So-
I need? 2?
Something like that.
I think I already have the top.
Yes, you do.
Go on, let me in.
So, there's some good and bad things about Subnautica, of course. For what it is, it's a really good game, but unfortunately, even with all of the patches and everything that they've done, there's still
Buggy.
there's still some bugs that are... I wouldn't say...
New blueprint acquired.
Most of the bugs that still exist in the game aren't completely game-breaking, but there's those fair few and far between that are major problems that they weren't able to get rid
Scanner
of.
can be used to synthesize blueprints from salvage technology and to record alien biological data. The fabricator draws from available data to provide environment.
Well, I'm gonna say this now. If you play it,
using locally available materials.
one, make sure you have a computer that it can at least handle some of it.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, if you don't, but you have a computer that can play at your own risk. Play at your own risk if your computer doesn't meet all of the
Standard.
the recommendations.
Now I gotta find out where that little cave was, because we need cave sulfur.
Yep. So,
I did get the first tank, you know what I mean? Ooh. Yay. Oh, this place makes me nervous. I can start scanning stuff, like myself.
yeah. So scanning things unlocks a codec entry, except you.
Continuing to monitor.
Hey,
Codec
cave
entries.
Detecting sulfur
Codec entries do a
deposits
couple
in
of
local cave
things.
systems.
One, they give it a little bit of sort of not backstory, but you know, sort of endemic knowledge on what you've scanned.
I need to get out of the cave. Let me out.
And 2, they will sort of tell you through some of them will have pictures and some of them won't, but usually it'll tell you a little bit about the life form that you scanned.
Yeah. Like how sometimes
It's-
they're terrifying.
Some of the bigger the thing you scan, the more it takes to scan. So especially big creatures take forever to scan, which is a little but
Repair tool, necessary.
yes. Out of everything you're going to make, probably the most necessary things you're going to make are the repair tool, the knife, and the scanner. Now, while the scanner doesn't seem like it's necessary, it is. It extremely is.
Results to databank.
Now you might ask yourself, why is it necessary? Well, we're not going to be able to see that now.
Rescue operation will be dispatched to your location in 9 hours. Continue to monitor for emergency transmissions from other life pods.
Anyway, Asher, you were saying?
People already heard that I'm saying that the scanner, while it doesn't seem useful, is extremely so, but we're not going to be able to see why, since what makes it useful doesn't appear in the safe shallows.
Yeah. Excuse me while I catch up.
Newt,
I should also mention that scrap metal
alien life forms
is
may have
limited.
unexpected applications. Utilizing alien resources is a proven survival strategy.
While there are ways around that, because scrap metal just gives you aluminum.
Titanium.
Sorry, titanium. And there are outcroppings that can respawn, which give you titanium as well. It's just that scrap is the biggest source of it.
I have a weird fish in my hand.
The bladderfish. I believe that's its actual official name is bladderfish.
What is a stalker doing here?
You're nearby a kelp forest, which is their natural habitat.
Hey, hey, hey. Leave me alone. Hey!
So,
Leave me!
okay, one, you're holding a fish, and it sees food. Two, it probably saw a piece of scrap and went for it. So that's one of the carnivorous creatures. It's called a stalker. It's called a stalker because it moves pretty silently, and the minute it sees food, well,
I don't know how many of these I caught, so...
it's gonna sneak up on you.
I need more food than I do fish right now, or meat right now.
Yeah, so
Fabricator cooks small organisms
there are two ways
while
to
disposing of
prepare
the
fish.
skeletal
You can either
structure,
cook them or cure
bodily
them.
fluids,
Cooking
and
them
internal
gives you
organs,
more,
thus rendering them safe
gives you
for
more
human
food.
consumption.
And can sometimes actually give you water in the process, but they spoil.
That's why you gotta eat them pretty quick.
Curing them causes them to stay for longer, but you get less food and they actually get rid of water because you're salting them to cure them.
Yeah.
Even if you do not cook fish, they will still spoil after a certain amount of time. I think the spoil time of raw and cooked fish is about the same. Cured fish has about like 1.25 times the weight for them to spoil. Like it's a significantly longer amount of time before they spoil. And the more spoiled the fish is, the less nutrients you get out of it.
New blueprint acquired.
So
I don't
your
know
best bet
if you were
is
there,
to-
Ashtar, but at one point in the last
Detecting
time I
increased
played
local
this,
radiation levels. Trend is consistent with damage to
I
the
carefully
Aurora's
go
drive
on food,
force
so I'm like,
sustained
okay, I'll
during
eat
planet
this, and
fall.
ended up eating 5 fish in a row.
Yeah. So, rotten food, like its name implies, gets rid of food and water. I should also mention that food will not heal you.
Nope, that goes on its own.
In a, I believe in freedom mood, you can eat food and it will heal you, but that's only freedom mode. In hardcore and survival, it will not. The only way to heal yourself is medkits. Which the submarine will periodically spawn in that medkit generator,
Yeah.
and you can also find in certain pieces of wreckage. Sometimes there'll be like crates near pieces of wreckage which will have medkits and other things in them. So be careful about your health.
I'm listening to you, but I'm also,
Keeping a tally on what you need.
yeah. So I need 2 more acid mushrooms to make a battery. I gotta find more copper ore to make copper wire. That takes 2. Okay, so we need 3 copper. At least. A little bit of gold and some table coral. I need to find silver. Silver's gonna be the fun part.
Yeah. So a distinct bug that that happens sometimes, which if you don't have a proper graphics driver, or a graphics driver that is out of date, is that table coral will clip through the ground.
Yeah, remember we had that happen last time.
Mm-hmm. But there isn't going to be a last time to see, so I'm referencing it as if it's the first.
Yeah.
So if you're having this issue, one way to get around it is to destroy table coral above other solid objects, like other table coral or rocks or things like that.
Yeah. But this one's being rather nice to me.
If you find yourself unable to collect table coral in any shape, way, or form, don't hurt yourself and just kind of stand there and molt and roil in it. Cheat it in if you need to, man.
I think the stalker is glitched.
Hmm.
I mean, look at this.
Yes, he is. His pathfinding borked.
Oh, water. Not water.
Oxygen.
I need the anti-water.
Air?
Yes, I need air. Alright. So I need to find gold, copper, and silver.
Copper is easy. So
Maybe
outcroppings. Yeah, so outcroppings, which are things you can see sort of around the map, which are just pieces of rock, are different types of stone. Depending on the type of stone, they'll drop different things. So the type of stone outcroppings you can see now are limestone, which will either drop... It's either limestone or something else like that, which, upon breaking them, will either drop a piece of titanium or a piece of copper. Later on, the deeper you go, the outcroppings can drop things like gold, silver, or even sometimes diamonds. But we don't have the tools to get even anywhere near that deep yet. Also, AJ just showed off one of the biggest material sinks and probably most worth it tool in the game, the Habitat Builder.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
So the Habitat Builder is exactly what it says on the tin. You can make your own bases with it.
The sooner we get that done, the sooner we get that, the sooner we get rolling properly.
Mhm. So the Habitat Builder is, while not necessary, practically something that is absolutely needed.
Is essential
Is the
in
ship
construction
moving, or
of
am I just
vehicles
seeing things?
and power plants.
That is not you seeing things. I think you might be being jostled by something. So, back in the older versions of the game, this no longer exists, by the way, thankfully. The lifeboat here used to have physics on the waves and would just sort of, steadily float its way about. The problem with this is that if you were to, say, get the aggro of a stalker and lead it back to your lifeboat, it could end up pushing you off the map. Because it would continually follow you while you stood on top of your lifeboat, but since your lifeboat wasn't anchored to one spot, it would just continually push your lifeboat in one direction while trying to get to you. And I'm guessing enough people complained to where the lifeboat wouldn't stay in one spot or drift into a much more dangerous spot to get to, that they've just made it so that it floats in one area and just sort of anchors itself down. This also used to be an issue with a couple other things that float on top of the water, where the physics of it were especially bad, and would just sort of float their way off into oblivion. So you'd have to make a new one just to do whatever you needed to. Although it was funny seeing some of the placeholder items, because they just sort of just said unobtainium.
Leading to an unknown environmental biome.
Because it's just like, here's a recipe, but you can't get the thing you need for it yet.
Hey, salt.
So this area I think is called like the
30
Red Kelp Zone or something like that.
Might have to show off the grace period real quick. No, maybe not. Not this time.
No, grace period is
Short
very
range
generous.
scans suggest this biome supports
Every
extensive
every
biodiversity
tick
and connected to a
underwater
number
you
of
lose like 3
small
oxygen or something like
networks.
that. Yeah, it's 3.
I saw these rocks, that's why I wanted to float up in this general area, you know?
Silver-based
Ooh,
wiring
silver!
kits are an essential component of
see.
many habitat modules.
Titanium. That was lithium.
Lithium, I don't. Maybe.
Copper. Hi, sand sharks! Ooh! Hello!
Meet the other carnivorous thing you're gonna meet. So stalkers and sand sharks are the 2 predators you're going to meet very early on in the game. Stalkers tend to stick to the coral. Sorry, not the coral. The kelp forest. Sand sharks like to stick to the red kelp zone.
Alright, last time I played I had to chase one off because it was kept attacking my base.
Yeah, so sand sharks won't track you as far, but they're much more dangerous because they burrow into the ground, and the only way you can see them in the ground is just sand particles. So if you're not careful, they can ambush you.
Oh yeah. And like I said, I had to chase one off last time because it kept attacking my base.
Yeah, so bases have integrity and stuff like that in the game. So what the developers were thinking of doing, which sort of ended up getting implemented, but not the way I think they really wanted it to, was they were thinking of creating like special, like not creatures, but you know, other marine life that would specifically go after your base for one reason or another.
Yeah.
So your integrity would
Go down over
help
time.
you run out over time, so you would have to repair it or, you know, fortify your base properly. But what ended up happening was that fortification stuff ended up just sort of being there. Like, things will attack your base if they're close by, but they're not going to go for your base outright, as they really wanted them to.
Yeah.
So, integrity more of now what integrity does, it's determine how much your base is going to, how much punishment your base can take from an accidental bite, or the sheer pressure of where you've set up your base. So if you set up your base, like, somewhere in one of the crevices or abysses somewhere in the map, you're going to need a base with a high integrity just so it doesn't burst a leak.
Yeah. Wire.
And in fact, it is very integral that you make, like, not a chain of, but multiple bases around the map. Because otherwise you are going to be going very long periods of time just out in the open waters if you're just using your lifeboat.
Another silver.
And that is not something you want to do, because you are extremely vulnerable when you do that.
Back to searching, huh?
Yep. If there's one thing this game does, it gives you a general sense of how to play like a survivalist, of, I need to make as many places I can stop by as possible. I need to make
Don't
it...
stay in caves too long.
Be advised, a common complication for
So,
cave divers is
caves
loss
aren't very
orientation,
common,
followed
but
by
caves are
vessels
sort of just
steering.
there. Some of them are blocked off with stones, some of them are not. It really depends on how the terrain once, you know, spawned.
Yeah.
Now, the distinct issue with caves is that, caves have their own sort of, ecosystem, is the best way to describe it. Including explodey fish.
That's not really what they're called. I just call them. They're called,
They're actually called crash fish, but
yeah.
They might have been called something else. They used to be called crashfish, at least.
I think they're still called crashfish.
Right.
Excuse me while I scan.
So,
This grab trap is the most useful thing I've ever found in this game.
okay, so now we've gotten to it. So,
Do you hear that? I triggered a crash fish, but it was nowhere near me.
yeah. So here's why the scanner's the most important tool you can make. It can scan parts,
Acquired.
which, when you scan enough parts, you get blueprints that you can make. Some of these blueprints are
Really useful.
absolutely necessary to get further into the game.
But
So, while
finding
the
them is the,
Finding them is the problem, though, because they're scattered about. Also, for those curious, if you scan the part of a blueprint you already have, you just get some titanium out of it. So, parts that you've already scanned aren't completely useless.
and sometimes... Ooh, beacon! Yes!
So, secondly, the parts that you find are completely reliant on what biome you're in.
Ooh, brain coral. Perfect.
Certain parts will only spawn in certain biomes. So, you can't cheese it and just get everything in the safe shallows.
That would make the game too easy.
Yep. To be fair, what it used to be is that there would just be, like, you know, like an actual, just, like, full blueprint that you could just access. Like, some of these did not used to be pieces you had to scan, and would just be blueprints you can just have.
If one half of the beacon was here, the other half must be around close by, right? 'Cause beacons-
Sometimes that's the case, and sometimes it's not. Parts are scattered weird. Parts tend to be scattered about near pieces of wreckage,
Uh-huh.
but pieces of wreckage will not always have enough parts to fully get.
That's weird. I got the grab trap at least.
Yeah. So what parts spawn near wreckage is completely random, but usually it will be among a set amount of. What area are you in?
No idea.
Okay.
I know I'm near the Aurora.
No, I mean, like, I'm explaining how the spawn tables work. It checks on what area you're in, and then it references what can spawn in that area, and decides on random dice roll what will be near that piece of particular wreckage. Now again, some pieces of wreckage, like further down, or, you know, like some parts further down, don't have pieces of wreckage near them, or are just kind of scattered about. Which is understandable because of how deep they are. Wreckage isn't going to get that far down before hitting something else.
Yeah.
But since the pieces are smaller, they can go further.
Oh, look, it's the stinky butts.
Gastropods. So gastropods are docile until you get too close to them.
Then they get gas.
Then they release a whole bunch of pods full of gas, which hurts.
But can't you,
I'm just-
like, try to capture it and use it at some point?
At any point... So at any point in time, if you're feeling particularly risky, you can purposely activate a gastropod and collect the pods from them. These pods don't have any use immediately, but you can later use them in certain recipes that require them.
I forgot the name of that guy, but I remember they're friendly.
Yep, it's a reefback. So there are certain creatures in this game so big that they have the species class, or, you know, the family class, Leviathan, attached to their name.
Sea life fragment. It's getting dark.
The reefback is one of them.
It's getting dark.
30 seconds.
And I need oxygen. Probably should be so close to the freaking Aurora. Am I no, I'm not supposed to. I thought I was.
Look, if you're anywhere, as long as you're farther away from the Aurora than your pod, you're fine.
Dark, I can't see. Probably start heading back, huh?
Yeah. So one of the things that AJ didn't make that is semi-useful is a flashlight. It's not as useful as you really think it is because it doesn't get as dark as you really think it does. Like, you can still see somewhat fine in the dark in Subnautica.
Yeah.
The flashlight's only really used for, like, caves or especially dark areas, which there's only really a few. AKA places that are deeper.
Oh, look, one of the gas pods just activated, so.
Yep. So as long as you stay in that gas, you take damage, and it is very, very unpleasant.
It probably stinks too.
That
I'll get there.
What are you looking for?
Where we were just at. Maybe it might be. I'm gonna see if I can find the other part of the sea glide. Right?
30 seconds.
I don't think I'm going the right way. I just thought of something. Asgard. Don't tanks normally need to be filled under pressure?
So as somebody who has been scuba diving but doesn't have certain expertise, which you definitely need, tanks need to be filled in a controlled controlled environment,
Yeah.
which means that yes, usually tanks are filled with a mixture of pressurized nitrogen and oxygen.
Vital
Mostly,
signs
it
stabilizing.
leans more towards nitrogen than oxygen because that's what we breathe.
Yeah.
So, again, this is one of those things of, if you want something a little more realistic about how it works, the nitrogen quote-unquote cheat is about as close as you're going to get to realism. All it does is make it so that you can breathe longer underwater, which, you know, makes sense.
Worth it, seriously though. You know what I mean? What are you doing?
Showing something. I can. Sorry.
Alright.
New blueprint acquired.
We'll probably do daytime soon.
Yeah. Sorry about that, everybody. Someone was checking in on me for my class. One of my classworks, and it's just like, they were asking if I took a picture and turned it in. And I was just trying to say this is like practice for later.
Oxygen.
Fun fact.
Hey, are we supposed to find this already?
Find what?
This pod.
Yes. So throughout the map, you can find
New PDA
you can find escape
data.
pods. Sometimes the radio will give you the
Acquired.
area of where they are. What the radio does, it'll give you random, it'll give you signals, anywhere from distress signals to, you know, like radio signals, and give you a coordinates of where they are.
Yeah.
If you wander around and are lucky, you can just straight up find these without needing the radio. If you know,
Continuing to monitor.
like, you don't actually need the coordinates for them to be there. They're in the world and have spawned in the world.
I found the first vehicle bay fragment though, F-Star.
Good. Secondly, the thing that AJ picked up, that weird what looks like, like an SD card or, something like that. That's an upgrade recipe. We can't use those yet. We don't have the thing we need to use those. But what those do is you take a piece of equipment, you combine it with some materials, and then it becomes a better piece of equipment.
New blueprint acquired.
So, this thing... I have some words about that thing.
I don't want to be gassed.
The mobile vehicle bay was the other extremely janky thing that they fixed. So, back in early beta, the mobile vehicle bay's physics were extreme jank. They were bad. So,
Ooh, got some gold.
nice. How you got in the vehicle bay was you had to use physics to walk up a ladder, but the problem is since it never anchored it down, it didn't anchor itself down, you would end up just pushing it further away from you trying to get on it. So it would just be this endless sort of like Benny Hill chase of trying to get on the damn vehicle bay the entire time.
30 seconds.
And it was the literal worst.
Sand shark, go away. I don't want you.
Now there's just a button prompt that allows you to get on the mobile vehicle bay, and it anchors itself somewhat in place. Instead of sliding around like it's on ice.
Let's go back home.
So yes, I'm salty about the early vehicle bay, but I'm also very thankful that they fixed it.
If they didn't, it'd still be a mess.
If they didn't fix it, you wouldn't be able to use them. You'd just have to constantly be making new mobile vehicle bays. Because they would just
And that's a waste
keep...
of resources.
Like, the only way that the mobile vehicle bay could even work is if you just, like, made one, shoved it against your life pod, and just hoped and prayed that it didn't zoom off into oblivion.
Didn't they have a tool that let you dig in the sand in the early versions?
No, you could just push a button and you would dig in the sand. So, there's a recipe to make glass, which is just some quartz. Way back when, what you had to do was you had to dig up sand and combined it with quartz to make glass. They got rid of that eventually. In fact, they got rid of that in early beta. They didn't get rid of that anywhere close to release date. They got rid of that in the time span relatively quickish, because I guess enough people were complaining about it. Because, one, it was causing some terrain problems. And two, people were getting really annoyed about how tedious it was. So what they did instead was they made it so that quartz had a higher spawn rate.
Yeah. Battery kit. Another piece of silver.
Blueprint
In that cave I
acquired.
was in, a piece of silver dropped, but I was panicking to gather it before my oxygen dropped, so...
Yeah, the distinct problem in the early game is that your oxygen is just going to be bleeding. And later in the game, that's less of a problem, but if you find yourself without reliable ways to get oxygen to you, yeah, it's gonna still happen.
And it's gonna suck. Sorry, stretching. It's Yeah, but glass.
Glass is useful for later.
I'm gonna put these things in storage for now. Everything goes into storage until I'm ready to use it. Or everything that can fit anyway, you know?
Yeah. So another problem that's going to happen in the early game is that you're not going to have enough storage. Again, there are ways to fix this that you can make. Like, you can make chests that just sort of float somewhere on the seabed, but then comes the problem of trying to remember where the hell you put them.
Yep.
So, what ends up being the best option is to just sort of make them, and then just put them directly under your pod, and just sort of leaving them there, because they don't float. They don't, like, they don't move.
New creature discovered.
Oh, I know what I need to make. I need to make one of the graph trap. I know I have the blueprint. Graph trap makes fishing in this game so much easier.
What Graph Trap does, it effectively makes a giant ball, which goes out and grabs a bunch all the small fish in a radius around it, and it makes catching.
New creature discovered. Oxygen.
Not catching fish, but just getting food so much easier. Problem is, some of the bigger fish, like that, you know, that sort of weird sea slug creature over there, the rabbit ray, some of those creatures can get stuck in it, and they just kind of get stuck there, but some bigger creatures will get attracted to it, but not stuck in it, per se.
Yeah.
So be careful where you put it. Because if you put it somewhere in like a kelp forest, it's going to get stalkers in that field, and they're going to be sort of stuck near it. And the only way to get them out of there is to go in yourself and remove the grab trap. And they're not going to be happy with you being in their territory.
Battery, copper. I need the battery for something else though right now. I can always make another battery if I get more copper.
Vital signs stabilizing.
Delicious. Back into the ocean. You know, I don't see how our characters don't get dehydrated faster, considering this, I think, is salt water.
The idea is that even in a salty environment, if your body is moisturized, in a sense of the word, it tends to lose water more slow. However, you do make a point of, since it is technically salt water, they should be getting dehydrated somewhat quicker. However, at the same time, the dehydration meter does fall faster.
Evil fish. Look at this called evil
30
fish.
seconds.
Ah, come on, I just got down here. Come on, I just got down here. Whiny voice.
And as I mentioned, a distinct problem in the early game is being able to actually just hold your breath long enough. If you're particularly unlucky, you'll spawn in an area with, like, barely any scrap around you, and you'll have to work off of a air bar without a tank, and that is just no.
Copper, yes. Every time we get something good, I'm like so excited.
Because it brings you closer to the things later.
Oh, I need silver, not copper. So I have to explore a little bit more inside the places. Outside the places. Yeah, I can English today. I already have a little, what's the next thing I'm supposed to make?
So I should mention that the Safe Shallows lives up to its name. The Safe Shallows doesn't actually have any predators in it unless unless pathfinding does a thing. The only thing you can find in the Safe Shallows that is distinctly dangerous is crash fish, and that's only if you get enough caves. Although gastropods technically count, but they're passive, and unless you get close, they're not gonna hurt you, so... The distinct problem is that the minute you get out of the Safe Shallows, there's going to be creatures that are going to want to chomp you. In the case of the kelp forest, it's stalkers, and in the case of the... In the case of the kelp... Hee. Yeah, so... A distinct weirdness with crash fish is, one, cave sulfur used to be called crash powder, which made a little more sense. Because it came from the crash fish area. But, there used to be a problem with crash fish that they got rid of where their their angry radius was so big, they would activate and crash themselves into walls nowhere near you. There used to be a problem for, I think, like 1 or 2 versions. It wasn't for very long, where the crash fish aggro radius was slightly too large. Like, it was about the same as it is now, but then for one version I think they were trying to fix some things, and someone must have misplaced a pointer or something, or accidentally wrote a bigger number on that pointer than they should have. And so, every so often, what would happen is, if you spawned, like, above a cave with, like, a crash fish flower on the bottom of the cave, if it was close enough to the ground, the crash fish would try and attack you through the ground. And in most cases, if you were at, like, the beginning of a cave, sometimes a crash fish somewhat further in the cave would activate and just sort of explode itself before it got to you.
Seriously.
Yep. Again, that wasn't something that lasted for very long, and I'm guessing they replaced the pointer.
Seriously.
So your first death is probably going to be from crash fish because they are ouch.
New creature discovered.
I read somewhere that Gary fish are the only fish that actually kept their name from the beta.
That's... I don't know if that's a lie, actually.
Check it out.
So...
Look it up.
So... No, I'm remembering, is what I'm doing. From the beta, the fish I distinctly remember from early beta were the peeper, which I think was still called peeper, by the way. It might have been called, like, the... It wasn't called the eye fish, it was something eye pun. It might have been something eye pun related, but I don't think it was. I think it was called peeper. Gary fish was unchanged.
I think they're one of the few fish that was unchanged. There's a couple of them, I think. From what I've read, I mean...
Out of the fish that weren't added later, yes. Gary fish was one of the few that kept its name. The bladderfish
Weekly exercise quotient by 500%. Data indicates
was
your favorite activity. Be
Yep.
sure to vary
I believe the bladderfish used to be called, like, the, something else. Bladderfish did have a different name for a bit, and then were called bladderfish later on. But it was very early beta that they had a different name. Hootfish kept their name. Stalkers had a different appearance.
The only bad thing about playing Subnautica is it makes you want to go to the bathroom. Can I have something other than titanium, please? Way back to the...
Sand sharks kept their name, and I believe gastropods also kept their name. Most of the stuff from the early beta tended to keep its name, but one of the things that I do remember changing was that the stalkers had a different model. A completely different model.
3, uploading our
Which I believe is used for another creature actually at this point.
Sea glide, so if we're late for the rendezvous, don't panic. Also, don't go home without us. Seriously. 3 out.
If that creature doesn't use its model, it uses a model that is very, very similar or based off of the old one.
Yeah.
It is common for those accustomed to synthetic foods to be repulsed by
Which I'll
eating
point
animal
out when we get
carcass.
there.
Remember that humans survived this way for millennia. You can too.
I mean, you can always make another battery, right?
Yeah. Batteries aren't the hardest thing to do. It's when you start going further and further into making things, like more complex recipes, is where things are going to start becoming a pain in the ass.
Excuse me while I heal myself again.
Like, the more complicated a recipe, the more moving parts you have that there are to making it.
Excuse me while I put the grab trap out so I can, eat.
Yeah, so one of the things that some people will do, especially if you're in hardcore mode, is what I did, and I would imagine some other people do, is they will look at the fabricator and take like a notebook or something like that and just make a list of the recipe.
Over there?
Yeah, Life Pod 3 is the one you were at.
Maybe there's stuff I missed because it's dark.
No. So
No, I know.
So here's how this works. When you get a distress signal, it doesn't care whether or not you have been there before. Even if you've gotten everything there.
Vital signs stabilizing.
So...
Plus, I want to see another part of the sea glides over there that I might have missed.
So one of the things I should mention is that for a while, when these were introduced, they were sort of... They were physical items that were just like an X. And so what they would do is that there is a slot in your suit for like accessories, and each one would take up a certain accessory slot. Like, there was only one slot they could take up, so you constantly had to switch them out. Eventually, what ended up happening was, the radio was introduced, and they made it so that they are now on a hotbar instead, that you can just turn on and off. Something much easier than what it was before. Because before you would just have like an inventory freaking... Not full of the things, but just like an entire row or two, just full of coordinates. Constantly switching between them, trying to figure out which one of these have I been to.
There's
Instead of just...
Let's see, God, not beacon. Hey, it's something. I missed this earlier. And now I have a sea
Just...
glide.
New blueprint acquired.
Nice.
Anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off that strong.
But yeah, no, instead of just
Oxygen.
meticulously going through everything again, not knowing if you had been to a location or not, now you can just get rid of the location on a hotbar when you've been there and gotten everything from there.
Now I'm heading back. But I'm gonna see if I can catch some fish on the way. 'Cause I need water and I need food. Mostly water. See, this is why I need the grab trap, because...
Yeah.
This seems like a good spot. Nope.
Local radiation readings suggest the Aurora's drive core has reached critical state. Quantum detonation will occur within 2 hours.
Hoping to catch some bladderfish, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so
Oxygen.
I should mention that fish themselves, like everything except for scrap, is something that will respawn and, you know, replenish itself properly. However, it does take a bit, so don't expect literally just a day to pass and it to be back. It will take like 1 or 2. But to make up for this, there's just a bunch.
Fish in my hand picking weird. You hear it?
Yep. All the fish make different noises. Although they used to be quiet. Noises weren't introduced until later. Peepers were one of the few that had noises in the beta. Peepers, I think, were the first to have noises, and then other creatures started to get them, like the smaller creatures, and I think the sand sharks.
Seek fluid
Sand sharks were, I think, the first
immediately.
predator to get their noises, and then stalkers got them, like, the very next version afterward.
Hopefully I can get back to my pod and, you know, make some of these fish into food so I can get some water out of them. I need bladderfish is what I need, but it's like...
Yeah. A distinct problem with this game is that not a lot of what you get in the game will give you water. There are very few sources of things that give you water, other than... Well, early in the game, there's very few things that give you water. The only thing that can give you water early game is bladderfish. Unless you get lucky and find one of those supply chests, which will also have water in them sometimes. But... Again, if you're playing on survival, water is going to be the thing that will probably kill you if it's not your health.
Leave me alone. Don't bite me. Ooh,
Oxygen.
did you see that?
Yep. So many of these fish, at least some of them, are based off of, like...
Real fish?
Well, some of them are based off of, like, mixtures of, like, old prehistoric fish and some other things. The Stalker, for example, is sort of based off of the mixture of a couple of things. One of which is prehistoric.
Okay.
Oh no.
What?
That's an egg it attracted.
Is that a bad thing?
Potentially. Depending on the egg. So one of the things in the game that was introduced much later is that certain creatures will have eggs. Not all fish have eggs in this game. Not all fish can have eggs. At first glance, eggs don't do anything. You can pick them up, put them down, nothing will happen. But if enough time passes, they'll hatch into a smaller version of the fish, which will go through a certain amount of time. And after that certain amount of time has passed, they will immediately grow into an adult version of the fish.
I think I gathered enough fish, by the way.
Probably. However, there is things you can do with those eggs later, but it's probably not worth your time.
Vital signs stabilizing.
Yeah, see, food does give you water.
Cooked food.
Specifically?
Specifically cooked food, except for one fish. One fish gives you water even when it's not cooked. But the trade-off...
Play dividends for me. Come here.
Yeah, but But the trade-off for the fact that cooked food is better is that it spoils easier. I should probably also mention that not all eggs are passive creatures.
Oh, I know that.
For those watching, not all eggs are going to be friendly to you when they hatch. In fact, I think the majority of eggs are from predator creatures. So, mostly because you can just pick up smaller creatures. So, creatures that are big, usually creatures you can't pick up on your own, are the ones that spawn eggs. But, I'd say a decent amount of those eggs are from predatory creatures, so be careful. Eggs also will not hatch unless in the right environment.
I know.
So if you plop them on... If you plop them in the life pod, they're not going to hatch on you. So don't worry about it. Although, be careful about if you need inventory space and just sort of throw an egg out haphazardly that it's not too close to where you live. Otherwise, there will be problems later.
This is Avery Quinn of Trading Ship Sunbeam. Aurora, do you read? Over? Nothing but vacuum. These Altera ships. They run low on engine grease, send an SOS, you offer to help, they don't pick up. Aurora, I'm out on the far side of the system. It's gonna take more than a week to reach your position. Do you still need our assistance? Over. I'll try them again tomorrow. Damn charter's gonna have us blowing our credits running errands for Altera. See what the long-range scans pick up in the meantime.
Well, that wasn't very kind sounding. I guess some people don't like Altera.
It is a multi-million-dollar company, so yeah, that's unexpected.
Look in boxes, look everywhere. There's a thermal vent, you hear that? Actually might be useful later.
Yep. So many of the things will not be explained. For reference, stalkers, whenever they pick up a piece of scrap, sometimes will drop a tooth.
Copper, I need silver.
Oxygen.
No, I need oxygen.
It is random on whether or not a stalker will drop a tooth, but I think someone did find out that like it's like fourth piece of scrap they pick up or something like that, they will always drop a tooth. And it is possible that if you pick up a piece of scrap and drop it near enough to a stalker, you can bait them in picking it up and possibly getting a tooth.
Right, I'm getting all this copper, but copper's not the metal I need. You know?
Yeah, that'll happen.
Also, I learned a long time ago not to touch the jellies.
Jellies? The floaters or the...
No, the look like
30
jellyfish.
seconds.
Oh, you mean
Caves?
the nettle?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are probably more based off of like just Portuguese man of wars. And yeah, don't touch, they hurt. If something probably looks like a jellyfish in real life, that will kill you, just don't touch it.
Sage words, my friend. Sage words.
never touch a jellyfish unless you know absolutely sure that it's not going to murder you. Somebody who used to be a marine biologist, most jellyfish are a no-touch zone.
Don't touch this.
Touch me and you're going to the
30
hospital,
seconds.
if you're lucky.
I see a big wreck over there I want to get to. I repeat.
Then again, the jellyfish that people tend to run into, like moon jellies and whatnot, are just gonna make you irritated. Box jellies, no. No, 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 and no.
Actually, there is a breed of jellyfish that have lived like without.
I'll
Huh?
I can explain. What ended up happening was that there was a lake that used to be attached to the ocean, and at one point it got cut off from the ocean, and this breed of jellyfish just propagated in it, and since they didn't have any natural predators, they evolved without stingers.
Passing 100 meters.
So there is this lake full of jellyfish, I forget what the species is, that doesn't sting. Because they never needed it to. But that's an outlier in what I am saying.
Yeah.
Also, biters are somewhat based off of piranha, somewhat. Mostly, if you look at the shape of their body, they're more like anglerfish, because of how they're shaped. But biters are pretty much...
a plain back reefback.
Yep.
I've never seen one like that.
That's what they used to look like. Until reefs, like actual reefs, were added to their back. But yeah, think of biters as the piranhas of this planet, because whenever they're in a habitat, they're just gonna hound and nip at you. Although, unlike most other bigger fish, which are one of those things that run,
30 seconds.
don't try and fight it,
Acquired.
run. Biters can be killed relatively easy since they're small fish. That's what the knife is. That's what the knife is mostly for, is for like smaller, aggressive fish.
Though I have seen someone kill a reaper.
They-
They had to stun the reaper like multiple times.
Reaper will find out what that is later. If you've seen the old LP, then you know what that is already, but for those new to this, and for when this is eventually the only one left, we'll see that later.
Is that a piece of the thing, or is that a piece of... That's just a piece of seal. Yes, seal fragment. Sweet.
So, AJ here got a biofuel reactor, and that's for later. TM.
Passing 100 meters. Oxygen efficiency decreased.
Yeah, that's gonna keep happening, so I'm gonna have to go up and down a few times just to make sure I get everything.
Yeah.
30
The
seconds.
distinct problem with the early game of Subnautica is that the two things that are going to limit you to what you're able to do are your oxygen and your nutrients.
Oh no, I'm underneath the reef back. Wait, what?
Emergency. A quantum detonation has occurred in the Aurora. Drive core. The reactor will reach a supercritical state in T-minus.
So this wasn't a thing that existed before.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Thanks for saving me.
Yes, as long as you're further away than the life pod, or on the life pod, you're fine. Any closer than the life pod, and bad things happen. So, before this happens, and in earlier versions, the entire area close to the Aurora is full of radiation.
For your convenience, the radiation suit has been added to your blueprint
So-
database.
In earlier versions of the game, the radiation suit would be given to you after it says that there was a leak. And, try and get too close to the Aurora. So once you touch the radiation for the first time, it's like, here's the suit, go back, make this.
Now it just gives it to you as soon as the thing...
Now it just gives it to you as soon as the reactor explodes. However, if you try to get close to the Aurora before the reactor explodes, it will still be irradiated.
You think I back to base?
Probably.
And we can always come back out here and look for more later.
So the main reason that beacons are very useful to get early on is because you can just mark shit and be like, okay, there's something here. I can come back to this.
Hi, Reefback.
The Reefback is one of the biggest leviathans I think there is, and it is peaceful.
Sometimes the stuff on its back isn't peaceful.
Yep. In fact, I think the biggest leviathan in the game is peaceful. That doesn't mean that all of them are, though. No, I should probably mention this before problems arise, is that the edge of the map is a no-go zone.
Oh, yeah. Remember, well, no. Never mind. Ignore that. Ignore what I just said.
Yep. So, way back when, the edge of the map used to be much smaller. And the edge of the map was literally just a sheer cliff into the oblivion. Into the abyss.
Are we in, like, a giant crater or something like that?
The idea is that we're sort of in this weird plateau in the middle of this giant crater. And this plateau is like this weird safe haven in the middle of this giant crater.
Aurora, this is Sunbeam.
And
again.
that things outside of this plateau are effectively a giant ecological dead zone.
How many of you? I didn't know. We're now en route to your location. We're gonna bring you home. Sunbeam out. What else can I say?
And for a while,
this big on a rock
in the
that
beta,
small
it was just sort of
and I blew
given the idea of, before there was an explanation, people just thought, oh, it's just the edge of the map. And even then, it wasn't really given a proper, like, it was given an explanation of it was an ecological dead zone before they really added better reason to it being an ecological dead zone than just, oh, it's just a dead zone. So people had their own theories about why it was a dead zone until they decided, you know what, we're gonna give it a reason to be a dead zone. And so, I'll explain that reason later. But
Hopefully we never come across what's in that area.
we come across a smaller one.
Oh, I know.
But as soon as we see it, I will explain why it is the way it is.
Astra, look what we made.
Yay!
The Sea Glide.
So, the
will
Sea
increase
Glide
your
is
effective exploration
the first
range. For your
of
safety,
the
please pack
better
supplies
ways of
for
getting
long
around.
journeys and stay within 5 kilometers of the nearest
So what the Sea
life
Glide does,
pod
it
or
effectively makes you faster as long as you have it out. And also gives you a tiny bit of radar and a bigger light. The Sea Glide is pretty much necessary if you want to be able to outswim some things. Because without it, you will get chomped. And it's also one of the easiest ways to start to get around the map quicker. Just mind your batteries.
Batteries won't be an issue once we get a certain thing, but to get that thing,
Yeah.
they're gonna be an issue.
So everything that you make that is technically electric, it runs on battery. Your scanner, your repair tool, your Sea Glide, everything like that runs on batteries. And the only way to replace these batteries is to... There's an option, I think, that allows you to just replace the battery. But you can't recharge batteries until you get something later.
Yeah.
If you notice, we have those 4 big ports. Those are for other things. There are bigger batteries, and that's what those are for. Our life pod, being the nice life pod it is, can charge 3.
Oh, wait, you can take those out?
No, you can put stuff in them.
Oh. I didn't know that, actually.
Yep.
My mind is blown. Oh,
So, those power cells,
Stop it.
which are big batteries, should just be left where they are for now, but you can take them out and replace them later.
Yeah.
They charge on their own, and effectively they're infinite. But if you want things to work in the pod, you do need to keep them there.
What was I looking at?
Question.
Some needed a power cell. I don't remember what it is. Oh, mobile vehicle bay. Oh, I just need some ingots. That's not too hard. Ingots need 10 titanium each, so I need about 20. I think to make them. Hold on. Just checking my math, you know what I mean? No, I only need 10. I'm smart. I only need 3. Why do I keep doing that?
Doing what?
Hitting the escape button instead of the tab button. And
Probably muscle memory from another game.
probably. Alright, now we have the mobile vehicle bay, but right now it's kind of useless.
We don't have the recipes to make this useful, but this is for things that are. This thing is for making things that are bigger than the Sea Glide, and in the long run, more useful.
So at least in a spot where, when we make bigger vehicles, they're not going to be stuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm warning everybody right now that the biggest vehicle you can make is one of those things that can and will get stuck if you're not careful.
That's why I'm trying to find a big enough spot, you know what I mean?
This should be fine though.
Is it-
Don't get too close to big help.
Don't get too close to that either. So you think this area would be good enough?
Yeah, something like about here.
Let's go up. Alright, hopefully it doesn't float away. I can't make anything right now, now I gotta remember where that freaking wreck is. Now that I have the Sea Glide, it's gonna be easier to get up and, get down there with, the least amount of oxygen lost.
Yeah. Sea Glide is pretty much a necessity to get places until you get better things.
I think take this way, 'cause I know it's gonna break itself.
Somewhere around there.
Look how much faster this is.
New blueprint
Rex
acquired.
over there. I'm gonna go take a look. First, oxygen. I need the laser cutter to
Passing
get
100 meters.
Yep.
Oxygen
So the
efficiency
other
decreased.
big tool that you're going to need, which is something that is not as much needed, is laser cutter. Laser cutter is used for exactly what it says on the tin. You cut open things that are too busted to be open on their own. It's only used for wrecks.
But it is quite needed.
Yep. Well, it's not needed, but some things behind those busted doors are
Really good.
really good. And there's a distinct reason why the laser cutter is something that you just kind of... You don't keep on the bar, but you sort of keep in your inventory just in case. Like, you don't keep it on the hotbar, but you keep it in your inventory. Same thing with the habitat builder, you just sort of like, either you keep it in your inventory, but not really on your hotbar unless you're doing something. Like, the tools you're probably going to have on your hotbar are going to be the knife, the scanner, the Seamoth, the flashlight, and then whatever else.
This is Ozzy from the cafeteria. What the hell, guys? They didn't warn us this might happen.
You think you might
Our pod was
be
almost
using the
crushed
most at
by
the
the
time.
Seamoth Bay on the way down. Now we're hanging on the edge of a cave system, and this grim-looking snake thing's trying to eat through the hull. Come get us already.
Signal location uploaded to PDA.
Stop it. Stop it. Seriously, let me stay above water, please. Here. I want to see what it takes to make a Seamoth. I want to make one before the end of the stream, you know?
Yeah. So the Seamoth is the first of the vehicles that you can make, and is tiny submarine. It is a one-man submersible.
Okay, I need a power cell, lead, lubricant, and titanium needle. Not that hard to make, actually.
Yes. So the Seamoth, in the grand scheme of things, is the least expensive, but probably also the one that meets its limit the first.
Yeah.
The Seamoth is small and agile, but it can't go... It can go decently deep, but not extremely deep.
I need to find some copper.
It doesn't have, well, I shouldn't say that. Sorry. I lost whatever. I was going to say that it didn't have, like, storage, but I was wrong. So it's just, like, every vehicle, which we haven't seen yet, has slots for upgrade stuff. I entirely forget what's what, but I do know that the Seamoth will reach its depth limit before the other vehicles, but is also smaller, the smallest of, and probably the most agile of all of them.
Yeah.
So it's good for exploration into tighter spaces and places you can't normally get by yourself, but in the long run, it's not going to get you where you to the very depths of where you might need to go, and out of all the vehicles, it doesn't have any offensive options.
Well, it does, but they're not.
Seek fluid intake.
Yeah, the Seamoth is meant for scouting and just being faster than the Sea Glide.
Alright,
It's-
copper.
It's not meant to be a sustainable vehicle unless in emergencies. Again, while the other vehicles are more expensive, they're also more worth it in the long run for their own reasons.
Oxygen.
My recommendation for people is that when they are starting the game, if they're doing, whether you're on freedom or survival, or even hardcore if you're really that masochistic, the Seamoth is going to be the first vehicle you're going to want to make, period.
Besides the Sea Glide. Well, Sea Glide's not a vehicle, though, so.
Sea Glide's not a vehicle, it's a tool, technically.
Do you have fish?
Probably. The Seamoth is going to help you stay.
Let's get back to the ship. I need water, and that's what I'm trying
It's
to
going to help you stay alive longer than the Sea Glide will. While the Sea Glide is useful on its own right, the Seamoth is probably more useful in the long run.
Yeah.
Although it's not bad to have both.
I like to keep myself hydrated, you know?
Fortunately, there is a quirk with the CMOF that exists. It's not necessarily a glitch, but it is one of those things that's just like...
It's like, why are you here?
It's a mechanic because it's tiny.
Vital signs stabilizing.
There we go. Now I'm all stuck up. I just gotta remember to eat these before they go bad.
Probably throw that kelp.
Yeah, I'll do that. Once I get back outside, you know?
Yeah, that's one of those things of just...
Oh, I forgot to grab the mesh. I'm smart.
Probably the...
No, rubber, not mesh. Rubber! Sorry, Ashtar. I needed a ingot, right? Let me check.
Yes.
Maybe under here, not under there. Fiber mesh and lead, I can do that. Lead, lubricant, and ingot. I think I have all of these. Be able to make titanium ingot. What do I need? Come on. I need lubricant, which I think I have in storage.
I think so.
No, but I know where to get some, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Oh, my eye itches. Ah! I need another fiber mesh. Do I have another fiber mesh? I do not, but like it's once again, I know where to get some. So back to the kelp emitter, the green kelp for a while, for a little bit. But first, get this out of it. There we go. So I need the pods for the lubricant, right? These little glowy things? Got a couple of these.
Yes.
Oh, my inventory's full. Go make the lubricant. Mesh can wait. I notice you lose water faster than you lose food.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Which does make more food, doesn't it? Pretty lot. I think we can go make the thing now, dude.
I think so.
First, actually, I want to get some of the mesh. I think I'm going the right way. God, it's dark. It got dark quick. Is that normal? I guess
That's normal.
it getting dark pretty quick.
Yeah. Day-night cycle on this planet is a little quicker, so.
Yes, I can make the radiation suit. So am I wearing it or? Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't directly say if you've worn it. That's one of the gripes about this game, is that if you equip something, it won't
This is
directly
Officer
say
Keen
if
in
you've
Light Pod
equipped it or
19.
not.
The captain is gone. I have assumed command. The last thing the captain did was give me coordinates for dry land. We regroup 1.5 kilometers southwest of the crash site. Stay together and good luck. This message will now repeat.
Rendezvous coordinates corrupted. Transmission origin coordinates downloaded. Signal location uploaded to PDA.
Alright, let's do this, shall we? Wait, what am I missing? Wait. I had 2 pieces of lead. That's why I made the suit. Hold on. I may have just messed up. Or does it take 2 pieces of lead to make the suit?
It took 2 pieces of lead to make the suit.
Oh, I don't remember.
It takes lead to make the suit. It's a radiation suit.
I know. I thought it only took 1, and I could use the other to make the moth. You know what I mean? Do I have another one? No, I do not. So I need to find lead. You know what? I think we should just stop here for now because we're like 5 minutes over time.
Yeah.
So next week we will get to see him off, and I guess see what else is around here. You know.
And I'm helping.
So until next week, stay happy and healthy, and we'll see you, I guess, next week. Anyway, this is AJ.
And Ashtar.
Have a great week. We'll see you next time. Later.
Bye.